My name is Eleanor. I'm 68 years old, a widow, and a retired librarian. I live alone in a small town in Vermont, in a house filled with books and quiet memories. My son, David, lives in Chicago now. He works in finance, makes good money, and has a wife named Kim and a daughter, Lily, who's turning 7 this year. I haven't seen them in almost 2 years. The last time I visited, I felt like a guest in their lives, welcomed, but only for a time. Their world moved quickly: school drop-offs, conference calls, soccer practice, takeout dinners. I sat on the edge of it all, a bit dizzy, smiling too much, afraid of being a burden. David was kind, but distant. Kim was polite. Lily was sunshine, always tugging at my hand. So when I got the call from David in March, inviting me to come stay for the summer, I felt a bloom of hope. "We could use the help," he said. "Lily's off school, and Kim and I will both be working a lot." Help. That word again. Still, I said yes. I wanted to see my granddaughter. I wanted to be needed. I wanted, selfishly, to belong. The night before I left for Chicago, I sat in my armchair with a cup of chamomile tea and opened the old wooden box where I kept keepsakes. In it were David's baby shoes, a report card from the 3rd grade where the teacher had written "David is bright but easily distracted," and a receipt from the local credit union dated 20 years ago. I remembered that day clearly. David had just been accepted into Northwestern University. Tuition was a mountain I could barely see the top of, but I was determined that he would go. I cashed out the only savings I had, the money George and I had put away for our retirement. After George passed, I never replenished it. David was excited, but never once did he ask what it cost me. I never told him. I made do with second-hand clothes, kept the heat low in winter, and picked up hours at the library shelving books until my fingers ached. He graduated, got a job, and moved on. Sometimes I wondered if he ever looked back. I arrived in June. The house was beautiful. Tall windows, modern art, soft furniture that looked untouched. Kim greeted me at the door, said they'd cleared out the guest room. I didn't see David until later that evening. He came in late, kissed my cheek, and thanked me for coming. We didn't talk much. That first week, I was full of energy. I made pancakes for Lily every morning. We read books on the porch, played dress-up, and watched old cartoons. Kim and David were busy, always somewhere else. I kept dinner warm for them. I folded their laundry. I offered, at first. Then it became expected. By mid-July, my knees ached, my back protested, and I realized no one ever asked how I was doing. David texted more than he spoke. Kim was curt and efficient, her eyes always flicking toward her phone. One afternoon, I overheard Kim on a Zoom call. She laughed and said, "Honestly, it's like we have a live-in nanny. David's mom's a godsend." Something in me crumbled. That night, I asked David if we could talk. I told him I was tired, that I needed some space. He frowned. "Mom, we're all tired. It's a busy season. You being here really helps us function." "But I'm not just here to function," I said. "I wanted to spend time with you, too. Not just be useful." He sighed. "We can talk about this later." We never did. August came. I began to withdraw. I stopped making dinner. I let the dishes pile up. One morning, I told Lily I needed a break, and she cried. Kim was furious and David said I was being unfair. I sat on the porch that night and watched the city lights flicker in the distance. I thought about George and how he would have handled this. He was softer with people. He always knew how to say the right thing. I tried to hold it all in until I could no longer pretend it didn't hurt. That night, I couldn't sleep. I booked my ticket home. On the day I left, only Lily hugged me goodbye. David helped with my bags, but avoided eye contact. "Thanks for everything, Mom," he said, like I was a coworker finishing a project. Back home, the silence was sharper than ever. I sent postcards. Called. Left messages. Weeks passed. Then months. Eventually, David stopped replying. Kim blocked my number. Lily, I imagine, forgets me a little more each day. I sit in my quiet house now, with my books and my aching knees, wondering how love could become obligation. I gave everything I had to be close to them, to matter. But all I earned was distance. I still set the table for twosome nights. Just in case he calls. Just in case he comes home. But he never does. By the fall, I could no longer deny the truth. I couldn't afford to live here much longer. The taxes went up again. Groceries cost more than ever. My pension, already thin, was stretched beyond its limits. The house, my home for over 40 years, had become too much. The stairs groaned. The pipes hissed. The cold came early and stayed too long. And I was tired. So I listed it. I packed the photo albums first, then George's records, then the books I couldn't bear to part with. The rest, I sold or gave away. I let go of the old red kettle. The yellow armchair. The curtains George had hated but hung anyway. And then, I stood in the empty kitchen one last time, hand on the doorknob, heart heavy, but strangely free. I had always dreamed of seeing Europe. Never the big cities, just a quiet place, maybe in Portugal or southern Spain, where the sun was kind and the pace of life slow. I'd read about expats living well on little, finding community and learning to smile again. I didn't know what lay ahead. But I knew I couldn't wait for someone to come save me. There was no one left to depend on. Only me. So, I bought a one-way ticket. And I'll leave in 2 weeks. I may be old, but I am not finished. Not yet.
Eleanor arrived in a sun-drenched coastal town in southern Portugal 2 weeks after selling the home she had lived in for over 40 years. The town, Alhio, was nothing like Vermont. The streets were narrow and cobbled, lined with faded white buildings wrapped in ivy and laundry fluttering like flags of quiet resilience. The sea was never far, always in view, always reminding her to exhale. She rented a small apartment across a bakery. The scent of fresh bread and oranges drifted in through her windows each morning. There were no stairs to climb. The air was warmer, gentler on her bones. Her knees still ached, her back still complained, but here, the pain didn't feel as heavy. She joined a local expat women's group, the Silver Threads, they called themselves. Women from the US, Canada, the UK, widows, divorcees, women whose children had drifted out of orbit, women like her. They met for tea on Wednesdays, took language classes together, strolled the markets in wide sun hats and linen skirts. Some painted. Others wrote poetry. They laughed too loudly sometimes, and no one cared. One woman, Joan, had been a nurse in Michigan. Another, Carla, once owned a bookshop in Edinburgh. They shared stories over espresso and pastel de nata, not comparing wounds but stitching themselves together with them. Eleanor kept a photo of Lily on her nightstand. Sometimes, she dreamed of her, of pancakes and dress-up and little hands tugging at hers. She still sent postcards, though she no longer expected replies. The ache of David's silence had dulled but never vanished. She let herself feel it, but she no longer fed it. She walked by the harbor each morning with a basket in hand, buying figs and fresh fish. She learned how to say bom dia to the baker without hesitation. She started writing again, essays, letters to herself, stories about a woman who thought her life was ending only to discover she still had more living to do. At night, she sat on her small balcony with a glass of wine and a book, the air sweet with the scent of salt and jasmine. The city lights were different here, gentler, less demanding. They did not flicker with urgency but glowed, steady and patient. Eleanor missed her family. That truth remained. But for the first time in years, she did not feel like she was waiting. She was living. Eleanor, a woman who gave everything to the people she loved, and then found herself with nothing but a suitcase and a quiet ache. But here's what she discovered. A mother's place is not always where her children are. Sometimes, it's where she finally feels peace. In a sunlit town by the sea, far from everything familiar, she learned to belong to herself again. Estranged, but not broken. This is how she learned to live, and even thrive, alone. After a lifetime of holding everything together, Eleanor let go. Not out of defeat, but because it was time. Her house was full of memories, yes, but also of noise, strain, and the weight of being needed. In Portugal, she woke up to something simpler. Not a second chance, but a first one, just for her. She's still a mother, but she's no longer defined by what she gave away. This chapter? It belongs to her.